Little ones love to make funny faces and animal noises, so when they hear the sounds of the barnyard, they're going to wiggle with delight. And we know that kids will have a ball singing along to the silliness in this musical farmyard adventure. Once upon a time, there was a little toddler who lived on a farm with his mom, dad, and pet piglet. Piglet loved to go on adventures, but his favorite place was the Whispering Woods. That's because every time he took a walk in the woods, all of the animals would say hello with their special sound. And one day, while playing hide-and-seek with his mom, Piggy wandered down a path he'd never seen before. And at the end of the path, he saw something amazing, a house made of hay bales with a red barn roof. We walked up to the door and knocked, and then waited for an answer. But instead of hearing a knock back, he heard a moo. Moo, who could that be? He wondered out loud. Then he took a deep breath and said, Moo, hello, is anybody home? And just then the door opened up, and a big brown cow stuck her head out and said, Moo, hello, what brings you to my farm today? Piggy explained that he was just playing hide-and-seek with his mom and asked if he could look around. Of course, said the cow, but please excuse me while I finish my breakfast. And as she walked away, Piggy looked inside the barn and saw all sorts of farm animals that he'd never seen before. There were sheep that looked like clouds and horses that looked like rainbows. It was so exciting. And just then a little lamb skipped over and said, Ba-ah, hello there. My name is Wooly. What's yours? I'm Piggy, he replied, and I've never seen any sheep that look like you before. Why are you gray like the clouds? Well, said Wooly, we all come from different places, and every animal here talks in rhymes and riddles and songs. So why don't you join us for a little ditty? And Wooly and Piggy stood in front of the rainbow horse, while the other animals joined in behind them. They all sang in perfect harmony. There were horses with striped tails and cows with polka dot hides. There were pigs that played the ukulele and chickens that tap danced. There were goats that spun around in circles and sheep that jumped over fences. Oh, it was so much fun. When the song was over, Piggy thought it was time to go. He thanked the animals for the fun and promised to come back again real soon. Then he waved goodbye as he skipped down the path and headed back to the Whispering Woods. As he walked, he couldn't stop thinking about how great it would be if he could bring his mom and dad to meet all of the talking animals. So as soon as he got home, he ran into the kitchen where they were making his favorite peanut butter and jelly sandwich and said, Mom, Dad, you have to come see the most amazing thing. He told them everything he'd seen and heard and how all of the animals talked in silly ways. Oh, I'd love to meet those animals, said Mom. Well, let's go then, said Dad. We'll bring some sandwiches and we can all have a picnic on the way. And Piggy squealed with delight when he heard that. So off they went down the lane and through the trees until they reached the Whispering Woods. They sat on a nearby log and took turns eating their sandwiches. But after a while, Piggy started to get bored. Where are all the animals? He wondered out loud. Just then, a wise old owl flew down from a tree and perched on the log next to him. Hoot, hoot, he said. What seems to be the trouble? We're looking for a talking farm, said Dad, with a house made of hay bales and a barn roof of red. Have you seen it? Yes, said the owl. It's just beyond the babbling brook, past the field of tall green grass. You can't miss it. So they followed the sound of the babbling brook until they came to a field full of tall grass. And when the grass parted, there was the house made of hay bales and the red barn roof. Piggy squealed with delight and dashed toward the door, but Dad stopped him and said, Wait, let's knock first. So he knocked and called out, Hello, is anybody home? But instead of hearing an answer, they heard a baa. Baa, who could that be? Wondered Piggy. Then he took a deep breath and said, Baa, hello, is anybody home? And just then the door opened and a fluffy white sheep stuck his head out and said, Baa, hello. What brings you to my farm today? Piggy explained that they were looking for a talking farm and asked if he could look around. Of course, said the sheep, but please excuse me while I finish my breakfast. And as he walked away, Piggy noticed that all of the animals were wearing name tags. So he read Fuzzy, Woozy, Lamb, and thought maybe they weren't talking animals after all. Maybe they just liked to pretend. But just then, a little goat skipped over and said, M. Hello there. My name is Billie Eilish. What's yours? I'm Piggy, he replied, and I've never seen any goats that look like you before. Why are you green like the grass? Well, said Billie Eilish. We all come from different places, and every animal here talks in rhymes and riddles and songs. So why don't you join us for a little ditty? And Billie Eilish and Piggy stood in front of the fluffy sheep, while the other animals joined in behind them. They all sang in perfect harmony. There were horses that galloped around in circles and pigs that played the trombone. There were ducks that paddled in a row and sheep that played hopscotch. There were cows that swung from the trees and goats that spun around in circles. Oh, it was so much fun. When the song was over, Piggy thought it was time to go. He thanked the animals for the fun and promised to come back again real soon. Then he waved goodbye as he skipped down the path and headed back to the Whispering Woods. On the way home, Piggy told his parents all about the silly sounds the animals made. "I can't wait to visit them again," he said. And his parents laughed and said, "We're sure they'll love to see you again." The next day, Piggy was getting ready for bed when suddenly he heard a knock at the door. He opened it and saw that it was the sheep from the farm with a worried look on his face. "Bay, hello, Piggy. I'm so glad I found you. Can you come help us? All of our animals have lost their voices and we don't know what to do." "Don't worry," said Piggy. "I'll bring the cure." And off he ran to the Whispering Woods to find the animals that lived there. He told them everything that had happened and asked if they knew what to do. "Why don't you ask the wisest animal in the woods?" said the owl, "the one who sits on that big stump over there." So Piggy went over and asked the turtle if she knew how to help the animals on the farm. "Of course," she said. "Every animal needs to take a spin on the wishing wheel and make a wish. Then all of their voices will return." So Piggy, the sheep, and the turtle walked over to the farm. The wishing wheel was in the barnyard, and all of the animals lined up to take their turn. First, the horses took a spin and wished for sweet-smelling hay. Then the cows wished for comfy beds of straw. Next, the pigs wished for yummy apples to eat. And finally, the goats wished for tall trees to climb. And wouldn't you know it, all of their wishes came true. And they were so happy to be able to talk again. They all thanked Piggy for helping them and invited him to take a spin on the wishing wheel. "Oh, I don't need a wish," said Piggy. "I'm just happy to be here." Then he spent the rest of the day playing with all of his new friends until it was time to go home. From that day on, Piggy visited the talking animals whenever he could. And he and his parents had the best time playing, singing, and making silly faces and sounds together.